You're telling me that Butch Hartman wrote a kids movie? Yes, indeed. On my never-ending quest to watch and review every single thing this man has ever graced with his presence, we now have stumbled upon one of the most interesting cases of a studio meddling with a movie that I've ever seen. Taking what was once a beloved French-British cartoon and stripping it of anything that made it unique and appealing. What movie am I talking about? Doogal. Also, look at this. When I went to VidCon in 2019, I asked Butch to draw me Doogal, thinking it would come out really bad, but what do you know, he did a good job. Many of you have probably heard of Doogal before. Releasing in 2006, it's often regarded as one of the worst animated movies of all time, for a variety of reasons, such as poor animation, shoddy voice acting, and its worst crime of all, starring Jimmy Kimmel. When I heard this, I was super confused. I remember watching this all the time as a kid. And sure, you're not going to be finding it on the Criterion Collection anytime soon, but it's certainly not the worst thing in the world, right? This is when I realized that for some bizarre reason, this film has two English versions. The original produced for England, and the second which was redubbed for American audiences, with the American version being the more well-known one, although not for good reason. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time a studio's taken a beloved British property and turned it into an awful American remake. So now what we have here is a movie that strangely enough has two pretty different versions of the same thing. Is that common? Well, it has happened before. Ironically enough, we can see the very same thing when it came to the reason the franchise became so popular in the first place. Like I said, as a kid I watched this all the time, except where I come from, it's known as the Magic Roundabout, sharing the name with its television counterpart, which was a stop-motion series created in France in 1964, starring the Hancock-esque dog Doogal, with his owner Florence, the performative cow Ermintrude, the very much not a stoner rabbit Dylan, well-meaning Sneal Brian, and the magical Jack-in-the-Box Zebedee, all residing in the Magic Garden, this place where the titular roundabout resides. Off topic, but there used to be a restaurant in Ireland I'd regularly visit called Zebedee's that used to use this guy as their mascot. Yeah, they repainted a few years ago, probably after realizing that isn't very, legal. The series was popular with kids, but received rave reviews and attained a cult-like status when it was translated for British audiences in 1965. Not just with babies either. Apparently when the BBC moved the series from their evening slot to one more appropriate for kids, they received multiple complaints from adults, who also watched and enjoyed the show. I mean, what adult likes children's cartoons? What weenies. Just why was the series so popular in the first place though? Well, supposedly, it came from the main character himself, Doogal, with his world-weary comments that adults find humor in. I think this is due to, instead of directly translating the scripts, the English writers instead opted to tell their own completely different stories, simply using the French footage as a base. Also, it might have something to do with the fact that the world these creatures inhabit is very bizarre and nonsensical, with some very obvious metaphors to some deeper stuff going on in the background, such as the main character Doogal being obsessed with sugar cubes, which is undoubtedly a reference to French leader Charles de Gaulle, whose favorite food was sugar cubes that were laced with, can I say that? Oh, okay guys, take the first two letters of my channel name and you fill in the blanks. But why am I talking about this, you may ask? Where could Butch Hartman possibly fit into all of this? Well, when the film rights were bought up by a very nice man who I'm sure has never been put in jail for doing anything wrong, he enlisted the help of none other than our good pal Butch Hartman to rewrite the thing to appeal to American audiences. And how did it turn out? But what was the reason behind it being received so poorly? Especially with the original getting at least somewhat decent reviews. And more importantly, what was Butch's response to this? As we all know, he's the king of excusing poor products he's made, so let's find out what he said, and what the differences between the two movies are that made the American one so much worse. But first, I want to tell you about Bespoke Post. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering epic boxes of top-shelf goods from under-the-radar brands. Every month, their members are introduced to cool new products from outdoor gear to home, kitchen goods and clothing, all based on a quiz you fill out. Each box has around $70 worth of goods inside, which you can get for a fraction of the price. You can even preview the box before it's shipped out to you, and you can decide to either keep it, swap it for another, or hey, if you're not a fan you can skip it altogether for no charge at all. I'm a big fan of the Weekender box, coming with this amazing durable and stylish bag that's great to have when you're on the move, and also this Over Easy box, containing helpful tools and ingredients to make breakfast with, like an iron skillet, a leather pot holder, Bloody Mary mix, pancake mix, and maple syrup. You got a whole dang meal right there. So to get 20% off your first box, click the link in the description and enter code LSMARK at checkout, or go to bespokepost.com/LSMARK. And thanks to Bespoke Post for sponsoring this video. Let's begin by talking about the major differences between the two versions. Then after, discuss Butch's excuses for the awful end product. The Magic Roundabout largely has the same setup as the original show. This cast of characters live in a town with a carousel in the center. Except, after clumsily hijacking a food cart, Doogal unleashes the evil counterpart to Zebedee from the roundabout. Wanna know what his name is? Z-Bad. Oh, sorry, I forgot to laugh.
Whatever happens, you mustn't blame yourself.
Yes you should? After he's released, he completely freezes the thing, with Doogal's owner Florence being trapped inside. And so Zebedee informs the apparent only residents of this town that they've got to go on a quest to find 3 diamonds before Z-Bad. As if so, he's gonna engulf the whole world in ice. From this point on, it follows a pretty standard formula. Kinda feels like the setup for a video game more than a movie, with them having to travel to distinct locations to retrieve a MacGuffin, with each time Z-Bad coming in at the last minute to steal it from them. A whole bunch of nothing happens throughout the runtime to try and make you think that the story is progressing in some way. Zebedee supposedly dies 30 minutes in. They try to give characters like Doogal an arc of learning not to be so greedy, and the snail wants to frick the cow for some reason, but again, not much is done here. Literally none of this even matters by the end. When they return back to the roundabout and see that it's been completely frozen over, with Z-Bad having collected all the Chaos Emeralds, the cow just sings in a high pitch and it breaks all the ice. That's all we needed to do. They could have just straight up sat in place for a couple days until Z-Bad got all the crystals and came back into the same thing, and none of it would have been different. Great. It's so weird having watched this thing again, because it's made me realize how as a kid, you just accept half the stuff going on here despite there being no rhyme or reason. Like them calling Zebedee's name 3 times and not summoning him, like he's Beetlejuice or something. They never even established that. Or the box they receive, that when pressed, just gives them something random to get out of the scenario. Like, why do they only use it like twice? I would have fucking spammed that shit. Or how about when Florence says,
Come on, children, we have to be brave.
You're also a child, why are you talking like that? The animation for the time also wasn't the best. This movie came out in 2005, which was the same year as Madagascar, Robots, and even a movie that doesn't have the best CGI like Chicken Little. Looks 10 times better than this. The designs for the main cast are all fine and good, but humans like the children look gross with their tiny eyes. This guy looks like frickin' Ian from Smosh. If there were one pro I could give it though, it's that I like the voice acting. Mainly the villain, who I feel gives a good menacing performance, along with Doogal, who's played by singer Robbie Williams, and Dylan, played by Bill Nye the Pokemon.
My body is in the chair, but my mind is in you too.
Honestly, while it has a bunch of flaws and is definitely not worth going out of your way to watch, this film isn't that bad. It's not good, but I can see why I liked it a ton as a kid. It's only an hour and 25 minutes with the pacing being pretty fast. I don't really see why this needed to have been changed for American audiences. I guess good old Harvey didn't see American kids finding a British program appealing. Isn't Peppa Pig like the biggest thing in the fucking world? I couldn't possibly see how the American version could be that much worse though. I mean, all you gotta do is take the original and redub it. There really isn't that much British slang in here, so it shouldn't be too hard, right?
Sweet move! That was great!
2 words, sir. Personal hygiene.
So long, Zebedee.
The first line is out of sync. Alright, so for some bizarre reason they felt it wasn't nearly enough to just add some American slang in there and call it a dad like dude or bro or man. Instead they thought the only way kids would enjoy this thing is if they filled it to the brim with references of movies and video games and shows like The Matrix, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Halo. Like in the original, they at least understand that not every single character needed to be constantly making quips, whereas here nobody ever shuts the hell up.
No. Master Chief ate it.
There are points here where characters will just say reference after reference. There was no restraint at all.
Here's Johnny. Someone order ribs.
Bring out your dead!
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Hey, thought we said no Disney jokes.
What's up?
Oh, look, we got Bone Thugs and Harmony up in here.
That was like 5 references in the span of 10 seconds. Not to mention all the voice cast were replaced with infinitely worse actors, who were only chosen because they're celebrities, like the aforementioned Jimmy Kimmel, Whoopi Goldberg, and Lincoln Loud.
What an unforeseeable accident.
That's a pretty bad flat.
They even give voice roles to characters who in the original didn't even speak, like the Moose, who is now voiced by Kevin Smith in a fart signboard.
It's my birthday. Go.
The biggest issue here is their lack of restraint. There are so many pointless additions that weren't needed here at all, such as the narrator, who just explains everything and all the dynamics during the intro, while the original had none.
There's Brian, the snail. Brian loved Ermintrude.
Great, thanks, couldn't figure that for myself. Then when a character isn't on screen, they make them say like a million quips, because they know they don't have to bother to try and make it match up with the audio. But it's not even like that was something on their mind, because half of these lines don't match up with the voices.
I train with Morpheus.
Morbius? But then while they're adding all this stuff, they actively removed stuff from the original that helped the story, such as a dream Doogal has of his owner and friends, which gives him the motivation to get back up and continue trying to find Florence while at their darkest moment. Yet here they just go to sleep, wake up, and are like, oh cool, we're here? This shit sucks. I don't know how you could possibly take an already not great movie and make it even worse. But hey, if anyone could do it, it'd have to be Butch, right? While Butch has acknowledged that he did indeed get brought in to write a new version, even pitching new ideas such as an opening with a live-action scene of a granddad reading the story of the film to the grandson, which had to be cut due to budget, but he claims that when he sat down to watch the finished product, only roughly 3% of his original script was kept in, claiming that they must have brought in somebody else to rewrite his rewrite. No, I'm not one to call Butch a liar, and I'm sure some of it was changed, but I don't know, 3% seems like a weird amount to keep. Like, why keep any at all if it's only going to be like 3 lines of dialogue? Also, as we all know, he has a common trend when it comes to discussing things that he's released that didn't get the best feedback, such as the introduction of characters like Poof, Sparky, and Chloe into the Fairly OddParents, where he always says, that wasn't my fault, guys. Nick wanted me to add in a new character. Blame them, not me. But like, I don't think Nick specifically asked you to make bad characters. The part's on you. Not to mention, if Harvey was so focused on putting this out as cheaply as possible, I doubt he would have bothered going through the trouble of hiring multiple writers. Especially when Butch says he had already finished his script and directed the actors to do their lines. Like, this all seems a little too convenient, doesn't it? So I don't know. I feel like if this were something that Butch didn't write and had next to nothing to do with, he wouldn't have only started to clarify it wasn't him upon gaining a huge social media presence and having people clown on him for this blunder. So either way, I think it's pretty funny that Butch had a hand in taking an iconic beloved British cartoon and turning it into a dumbed down, pop culture spewing, crappy American redub that went down in history as one of the worst animated movies ever made. And so it stands among his other monumental blunders, along with the Fairly OddParents reboot, Bunsen as a Beast, and PINY Institute of New York. What the hell?